The courtroom is abuzz with the usual chatter, the shuffle of papers, the soft murmur of voices, and the rhythmic clicking of heels on the polished floor. The faint scent of coffee mingles with the sterile scent of paper and wood, grounding the space in a familiar routine. The fluorescent lights hum overhead, casting a sharp clinical glow that contrasts with the warmth of the room below. Judge Caprio enters, his presence commanding immediate attention. His robe flows behind him, and the room quiets as all eyes turn toward him. There's a quiet authority in his step, but today something feels different. Something is hanging in the air, just beneath the surface. At the defendant's table stands a man in his late 30s, his clothes modest, his posture slightly hunched. He's nervous, yet there's an unsettling calm to him, a stillness that suggests something deeper. The kind of stillness that signals a weight of internal conflict, a soul wrestling with a truth that needs to be heard. As Judge Caprio prepares to ask the usual questions, the defendant speaks first, cutting through the air like a blade. "I'm guilty," he says, his voice steady but raw, filled with a vulnerability that causes the room to pause. "I didn't stop at the red light. I know I broke the law. I could lie and try to get out of this, but I won't." There's a moment of complete silence. Even the bailiff freezes, his hand hovering above the case files. The tension in the room thickens as the audience holds its collective breath, wondering what comes next. Judge Caprio looks at the defendant with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "You're confessing without being asked?" The judge's voice is calm, but there's an unmistakable intrigue in his tone. "Why?" The man shifts his weight, his eyes not quite meeting the judge's. He looks down at the floor, as if searching for the right words. "Because it's the truth, Your Honor," he begins, his voice breaking slightly with the weight of his confession. "And sometimes the truth is more important than the consequence." The room remains still, every eye on the defendant, waiting for the next moment, the next piece of this puzzle. Judge Caprio leans back in his chair, his fingers steepled together as he watches the defendant with an almost analytical gaze. The usual brisk pace of the courtroom has slowed to a thoughtful, almost contemplative rhythm. His sharp eyes remain fixed on the man, searching for something. Sincerity, guilt, perhaps even a hint of remorse. A soft murmur ripples through the room, but Judge Caprio holds up a hand, signaling for silence. He turns his gaze to the defendant, who stands with a slight hunch in his shoulders, awaiting judgment. "So, you're telling me you broke the law," Judge Caprio says, his voice steady but edged with curiosity. "And you're accepting the consequences without hesitation. Why not try to defend yourself? Try to lessen the punishment?" The defendant looks up now, meeting the judge's gaze. His eyes are tired, but there's a quiet resolve there, a truth that feels more important than any leniency he could ask for. "I could," he admits, his voice quieter now, "but I don't want to live with that lie. I've spent years hiding behind excuses, running from the truth. I've made plenty of mistakes, but the truth is the only thing that sets you right." The courtroom falls silent, the weight of the defendant's words settling in the air like a heavy fog. Judge Caprio's gaze softens just slightly. He's seen people attempt to squirm their way out of responsibility before, but this man is different. He's not looking for pity or mercy. He's looking for something deeper, something only truth can provide. "I appreciate your candor," Judge Caprio says after a pause, his tone warm but cautious. "But honesty doesn't always make things easier. It doesn't guarantee anything." The defendant nods slowly, his shoulders slightly slumped. The weight of his honesty seems to sink in, but his eyes remain steady, unwavering. "I know," he says softly, almost to himself. "But it feels right, you know?" The judge leans forward, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. The courtroom is bathed in a quiet intensity, the usual rush of procedural routine suspended in the air. This case, it seems, is no longer just about a simple traffic violation. It has become something much more. A study in integrity, honor, and the courage it takes to stand by the truth. "So you're telling me," Judge Caprio begins, his voice quieter now, more thoughtful, "that telling the truth means more to you than what happens next? You understand that the outcome may not change, that the fine may still stand, but you're choosing honesty anyway?" The defendant takes a slow, deliberate breath, his eyes locking with the judge's. His voice is steady, unwavering. Yes, Your Honor, I've spent too many years making excuses, hiding from the truth. It's easier to lie, but I've learned that the truth doesn't just set you free, it gives you peace. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I don't want to make them worse by lying about them. There's a moment of heavy silence as the courtroom digests his words. The soft rustle of paper, the faint tapping of a foot, all seems to fall away as the defendant's words echo through the room, resonating with quiet strength. Judge Caprio's gaze softens further. He's seen many defendants, many confessions, but there's something raw, something real about this man's honesty. It's not just the law being upheld here, it's a personal truth being shared, and that in itself is a rarity. You're not asking for mercy, Judge Caprio says after a long pause, his voice rich with respect. You're asking for fairness. That's rare. The defendant's eyes meet his with a quiet resolve. I'm not asking for anything, Your Honor, just the chance to make things right. Judge Caprio leans back in his chair, considering the man before him. The courtroom, though still, feels somehow lighter, filled with the weight of the truth shared. There's a quiet dignity in the air now, an understanding that justice is not just about following the letter of the law, but about recognizing the character of those who stand before the bench. After a long pause, Judge Caprio speaks, his voice steady but filled with something unspoken. Warmth, perhaps, or respect. I'm going to reduce your fine, Mr. Harper, he says, the words hanging in the air. Not because of your confession, but because of your integrity. It's clear you understand the weight of your actions, and you're not running from them. The defendant's eyes widen, a slight gasp escaping him as the relief floods his chest. He hadn't expected this. He'd prepared himself for the punishment, for the consequences. But this feels like a quiet victory. Your fine will be reduced to half, Judge Caprio continues, locking eyes with the defendant. But this isn't a reward for a confession. This is a recognition of the courage it takes to stand here, knowing that the truth may not change the outcome, but still choosing it anyway. A wave of relief washes over the defendant, his shoulders sagging with gratitude. Thank you, Your Honor, he says quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Judge Caprio gives a small nod, his eyes soft but firm. Just remember, he says, his voice a bit quieter, the truth may not always set you free, but it will always earn you something more important: respect. As the defendant exits the courtroom, the narrator's voice enters, gentle and reflective. Honesty doesn't always win you freedom, but it earns you respect. In a world where lies often seem easier to tell, the courage to stand by the truth is a rare and valuable thing. The camera lingers on Judge Caprio's thoughtful expression as he watches the defendant leave, the courtroom now returning to its usual hum. But something is different today. The air feels charged with the weight of integrity, of a truth told without hesitation. The narrator continues, in a courtroom and in life, the truth may not always be the easiest path, but it is the path that leads to honor.